Hi, welcome to Raj Alnai. Today we are going to discuss about understanding test cases. As you all know, whenever we are going to develop any application, not only developing coding, user interface designs and all that, even testing plays a vital and important role. So test cases are something which is essentially important, whether to verify and validate whether whatever the business requirements given by the customer was developed by the team or not. So usually this testing have two different things. So one is manual testing and followed by the automation testing. So manual testing majorly focusing on the documentation part, preparing some test cases, test scripts, test plans, all that. Automation testing using different tools like Selenium, Silk, WinRunner, LoadRunner, all that. Testing will be performed by the testing. The reason behind this video is majorly provide a glimpse over understanding of the test cases, especially for the people who are new to testing, as well as people who wants to create their career in the testing as well as in application development. So this video exclusively created as well as the kind of information I am going to provide is to simplify and explain what exactly the test cases are all about, followed by other things, so that especially newer learners or else interested people can get some idea over this. To make this video very simple, I have just created this in Q&A part, something like question and answers kind of stuff, wherein I'm going to present few question and answers here. The first is about what test cases are all about. And second, why test cases required for any of the project. Followed by this, when do we write test cases? And why do we write test cases, the reasons behind that. Followed by this, how different test cases and test scenarios are different. Last but not least, how to write test case, means what aspects do we require to follow. I don't say format, but usually format may vary slightly from organization to organization based on the template we use, but formats remains constant. But what are the points to be focused by taking some examples so that I'll explain in detail to you, so that people will have an understanding over this. Now coming back to the point, the first thing is about what test cases are all about. Test cases nothing but the kind of group of conditions under which the tester determines whether an application development working as per the customer requirements or not. This is nothing to do with technology. This is nothing to do with domain, because initially to start with, customer will give us the requirements. Sometimes we create the detailed requirements by the business analyst team, all that. So whenever we identify the requirements, that has to be implemented and that has to be developed in a form of writing code, all that by the development team. But we have to make sure whether the team has created whatever the conditions as well as the information created by the development team. Is it the same way what customer requires or not? That has to be known to the testing team well in advance, because there are two conditions. One is verification and validation phase. So testing team is are the people who has to verify and validate whether the requirements developed by the team is according to the need or not. So that is what the major reason behind developing this testing, all that. So in reference to that, the first thing is all about test cases. Test cases has to be prepared by the testing team. So which includes like preconditions. What are the preconditions to be mentioned, followed by the kind of case name, what exactly the case we are going to mention in it. At the same time, what must be the input conditions, followed by the expected results. So this is all about test case. If I am comparing this with use case, because there are two cases in application development. One is use case and second is test case. Use case is a condition which will be provided a glimpse over the functionality, what is to be developed from the developer point of view, right? So because functionality, what are the preconditions, what are the post conditions, what success scenarios have to be mentioned in between, is there any exemptions we have, right? What kind of priority, all these things we talk about use case. Of course, I'm going to make a detailed video on use cases in coming days. So use case give a glimpse over the development perspective, whereas test case gives a glimpse over the testing perspective. So two different things. One is development perspective, second is testing perspective. So development perspective for the developer, so that what is to develop, there are some conditions will be mentioned in it. When it comes to the test cases and all, what developer has done, whether it is rightly done or not. So that has to be compared by the testing team. So for that, these test cases and all, everything has to be prepared. So this must include, as I mentioned you, preconditions has to be included in it, followed by the case name. Next, what must be the input conditions and the kind of expected results, what is that we are going to expect. The second point I'm going to discuss about why test case required for any of the projects. So for what reason you are going to provide. So test cases are preparing for the benefit of understanding about the test strategy. What is the test strategy are we going to follow? The kind of process in reference to the testing, what is that we are following, preconditions followed by expected output. You can see the same similarity in the first question which I have given. So for that reason, it is being used. At the same time, it is being executed during the testing process to check whether the application is performing according to the development or not. So both the questions were more of similar, but why I have given the detailed part is that, so there is a line of difference between what test case and why test case. So what test case will give you an understanding over about what exactly test case is all about. In reference to the why test cases means what was the reason behind that, right? So why test cases required for any of the project is what we need to know. Next, when do we write test cases? At what stage usually test cases we write, and why do we write test cases? The reasons was given in the third and fourth questions. So when do we write test cases means when customer has given the business needs. Usually business analyst team will gather the requirements from the customer. So whenever they have gathered the requirements, they have to mention all the information. So when the customer has given the business requirements or the business needs, so that time we have to write test cases. So based on that, testing team will start writing the test cases. Of course, there are templates follows. Templates will vary, of course, slightly. I don't say that 100% there will be a variation. Standards remains constant, right? So I don't say no for that. But test cases vary slightly, right? So the kind of templates what they use may have some variation, but end of the day, they have to prepare some test case documents. And once the test case document is done, that will be sent back to the test lead for the review process. Next, finally, when the development finishes developing the product, it will be handed over to the testing team so that we can see cross-check whether whatever the work is being done by the team and what are the expected results. Because there are two results. One is expected, second is actual result. Expected result is what customer is expecting. Actual result is what developer has developed it. If both are same, we consider that test condition is considered as pass. If both are not same, test condition is considered as fail, and where those failures were, that will be mentioned, and again it will be reviewed by the development team accordingly. So which is a continuous process. This is not a process which will be done on one time. This is a process which will be continued forever. Now, the fourth question is that why do we write test cases? The reasons. Reasons of writing test cases as follows. This is required for us to maintain the consistency in the test case execution. At the same time, to make sure a better test coverage as a whole. At the same time, it also depends on the process rather than on a person basis, because it's not person-centric, it's a process-centric. That is what usually any application develops. So process-centric is the prime agenda which we have to be focused more on. Last but not least, avoid to training for new test engineers on the product, so that if you have prepared these test cases, so that they'll have an idea over what is to do and how it is to be done, all that. Now, in the fifth question, I am going to explain you the kind of test cases, specific scenarios, differences. Test cases is a condition where an application is working as per the requirement or not. That's what I was mentioned a couple of times in this video. So that is what test cases, whether is this application working according to the requirements of the customer requirement or not, is what explained under test case. But test scenario describes the situation or a functionality that requires testing, because test scenario based on the test cases and all everything will be prepared. So test scenario describes the situation, what exactly the situation was, or the functionality that requires testing. In that, what are the customer requirements and whether is it satisfied or not, right? So this is how usually we differentiate between test case and test scenarios. Scenarios will be prepared, so the detailed part will be comes under the test case. Now, last but not least, we need to know about how to write test cases, means what format. Of course, I'm not going to show the format, but I'm writing some points, right? How to write test cases and all, and what points to be considered and all everything is what I'm explaining in this video. So for this, I'm just taking an flight reservation system so that it is easier for people to understand. So in this test cases and all, we have to verify different conditions. The first condition in this is to verify the portal to add new flights in the system, right? So this is what generally the first case is, right? So verification is the phase where we have to verify whether the portal to add new flights in the system is what one must be knowing. So this is essentially required. This is the first thing which we must be knowing for sure. Second point, this is to verify. Of course, verification is something essentially important, wherein to understand. Here we need to fill the flight details. We have to fill all the flight details here. Flight details may be the name of the flight, right? So code, at the same time from which destination to which destination, and capacity of the flight, seating capacity, I mean to say, right? So what are the timings, frequencies, right? So all these things will be mentioned in this, wherein followed by this, whatever the new flights uh, were adding to the website, to the site and all everything will be successfully added into the system. This is the second point. Third is to verify where users wants to search, because users can search for flights based on different categories. Maybe based on the name they can categorize it, or as from to, right? From where the flight starts and where it will be going, etc. At the same time, maybe based upon the kind of flight code, right? So if anybody wants to search the flight details, if they want to book tickets and all everything, so not only the flight maybe based on the flight name they can identify that, or else based on the code number of that particular flight people can see, or else from the destinations, between the destinations. So that information actually at the same time status, right? So users can see about the status, right? So what is the status of it, right? So status and as well as the timings of the flight, all this information can be seen here. Next, user can verify based upon the kind of flight details followed by the availability. Flight details, timings, and availability as well. So flight details, timings followed by availability, this can be verified. Next, user can verify, whoever the user it can be, right? So they need to have an option for search the results, open complete details of the flight, right? So they need to have that information also equally here. This is what something we need to know. Next, at the same time, it is also verifying about the flight status availability of the seats. Right? So search about the availability of the seats which are available on the particular flight which they were opting for. Right? So they can see the availability of the seats or not. Followed by this, they can also verify in a graphical view. Right? So whatever the graphical representation they wants to make out of it, right? So graphical view is also essentially required here. I can say graphical, right? So about the graphical view of the airline seating arrangements. Right, so airline seating arrangements, so that seat numbers and all where exactly it comes and all. Based on that, where user wants to book any kind of seat as per their requirement, so they can even book that, right? So that is also essentially required here, right? So that seat numbers, availability of the status of that particular seat, all these things will be verified, can be rectified, can be searched by the people. Next, they have to verify this based on the pricing part. Right? So pricing is also one of the element we need to see. Right? So pricing of different types of seats. Right? So which is displayed because these are two maybe, right? Economic class or business class or something like that. Pricing varies between economic class and business class, all that. So that type of pricing and also can be seen by the person who wants to book the seats in the flight. Right? So to travel on that. Now, apart from that, they can also use a can successfully select single or more than one seat. Right? So because number of seats the person wants to book for their family or for friends, all that, right? So maybe families traveling, right? So they wants to book more than one seat. Of course, they have to provide the valid information and all, of course, but still, end of the day, a person can book, select multiple seats for their family to travel, or maybe friends to travel to one destination to another destination. This is what we need to verify. So this is also one of the condition. Next more verification condition is, next one more verification condition is that whether whatever the users cannot select or not. Is not permitted to select seats that are already booked or not allowed for booking. Right. So this is also one of the criteria we need to follow. Next, after that, verify after selecting seats, enter the rights. So cannot select all that stuff. That is one thing. After that, enter passenger details and making payment. The selected seats get booked. This is also one of the things which we have to be focused more on. After that, verify successfully booking seats, so that the updation status and all everything will be received by them. This is also one of the things. Next thing is that verify a confirmation, right? So that is also important. Verify the confirmation of mail, right? So verify confirmation of the mail along with the ticket details, all that information. At the same time, there may be some limitations here, a maximum limit, right? So we need to mention the maximum limit of seats that user can book, because there will be some limitation where only specific number of seats can book by a person. More than that may not be allowed, all that stuff. Next, one more aspect to verify, to identify the different types of payment modes, right? So different type of payment options, different types of payment options or the methods that also should be known to us well in advance. Next, apart from that, we need to verify whether the presented with additional options like luggage or extra things like that. So it means like luggage, right? So at the same time, luggage may be extra legroom, right? So that also one of the option, like either at the same time food beverages, right? So all these things can be. Next, one more verification, wherein for canceling the tickets, right? So whenever there is a option to book the tickets, obviously there, if there is any unidentified reasons, maybe uncertain reasons happen, maybe depends on any other urgency. The customer wants to cancel the tickets and all, there must be an option for cancellation of the tickets. But for the cancellation and all, of course, there are charges applies. So that charges, all these will be mentioned under the conditions. That is also there. And last but not least, verifying after cancellation that seats status is updated as available. So because whatever the seats they have booked, so once the person has cancelled, automatically the updation of the seats will be available here. So these are the test case points, right? So which generally for flight reservation system and all everything is what is all about. So of course, this is something which can be prepared for any of the application, nothing, but to have a simple understanding, I've just taken this example. I hope you guys have got a clarity over what exactly the test cases is all about. So why test cases required? What was the reason behind that, right? So how do we do that? What points will be considered? I hope you got a clarity on this. If you have any more information required, so if you have any queries or any kind of training needs, please reach out to the contact details, which will be posted in below to this video. Thank you.